This is the Empower Podcast, released June 6th, 2022, episode 592, Product Design with Simone Giertz.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And my name is Simone Giertz, and I am... this is a hard one.
You had the same response last time, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
no. No, it's great. Simone, you are a creature in evolution. You are evolving.
Ever evolving. But I guess I'm trying to sort through my list of titles and be like, which one brings me joy? And I'm currently mostly going with inventor and product designer, and then a little bit ashamed, I'll say, and a YouTuber.
Nah, that's great. That's great. You know what? Everybody needs that engine of growth, and you have it, and you keep people entertained in that way. And I think the product designer is what we're going to focus on here because you have a new store.
Yeah. No, it's
really
been
exciting.
a long time coming. I was checking the bullet points from last time I was on the Amp Hour, and I was talking about maybe wanting to make maker kits, but I was a little bit nervous around it. And I know that was something that I thought about for a while, but I was never really excited enough to pursue it. And then for the last, honestly, it's been almost 5 years since I started working on my first product. I've been kind of slowly trying to nudge things towards being product development focused. And last month I launched the Giertz store, which is my online store with products that we've developed. And that's kind of become my future plan.
Yeah, it's like your new home base. It's you get to point people there and they can go buy all the cool stuff. So I remember actually we talked about this a little bit. We talked about this in two different ways, I think. One, I think we talked about it a little bit on that episode. So we'll obviously link that in for people who haven't heard it. It's, Simone and a different part of her journey. And it was a lot of fun talking about that. I think that was still kind of shitty robot time. I can't believe I swore in this show before you did. That's pretty great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But you're the queen, still the queen of shitty robots.
I don't know if that means that you win or that you lose.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
And so you were right in the middle of YouTube ascendancy, I think is probably the right way to think of it, right?
It's a word that I would need to Google to understand.
Oh.
Ascendancy?
Like on the rise, ascend.
Yeah. Oh, ascendancy. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, it was definitely, I feel like you can kind of block my work into 3 different chapters so far, or first being shitty robots, and then I guess having a brain tumor felt like one chapter, and now it really feels like a new era of product design and kind of still making stuff for YouTube, and because I'm enjoying that and I'm enjoying it as a platform, but also having this other goal in mind.
I really so first off, I always get really excited when your videos come out. They're definitely different, right? And I think you've actually made that transition really well too, because every time I see a new Simone video, I'm like, it's not okay, what's she going to get slapped by, which robot is she going to get assaulted by now? But it's great. You're showing a lot of the process, and actually in the last chat, you had actually said, I don't show as much of the process. We were talking about electronics. You said you don't show that much of the process, but I feel like with the stuff you've been doing lately, you actually have been, the lemon window that you made was perfect. That's a great example. You show everything.
Yeah. I think the different, so I've kind of transitioned into a different category of builds, because what I started doing on YouTube during the shitty robot days, it was the whole video was me playing around with a project that I'd built already, or with a robot. So the video was just me being oh, I built this thing and now we're gonna mess around with it. And then when I started building projects that didn't have that punchline in the same way, so I'm not going to spend 10 minutes sitting at a table and showing off the table and all it does. So I was kind of forced to start documenting more of the build, which is really uncomfortable. It's
really?
Yeah,
think you're great at
it's
it. I
still
mean,
it. Oh, you thank you. Every time is a struggle, and every time is like,
mm,
I'm not going to get this together. I don't have enough
oh,
footage, or it's not good enough, and it's just like it's just very hard to do those things in parallel for me, and I think for a lot of people. So it's
oh yeah,
but yeah, it was really the nature of the projects that kind of forced me into that. And I'm always happy to have the footage afterwards and like all of the storytelling is in that process. But in the beginning, I didn't have to film a process because the project itself and like showing it off was enough to make a video.
got it. So you could like lock yourself away for however many hours it takes to make the early prototype of the robot in the old days,
Hmm.
and then you could just, you're saying you're just filming the after the prototype is done-ish. Maybe you're making
Yeah,
some tweaks
no,
to it.
I
Yeah.
remember being like, oh, I have 20 minutes of footage to edit for this video. That's so much. And now
Right.
when I like have a build video, I'll easily have like 10 hours of footage for a build.
Ah, yeah, yeah. That's oof, yeah. That is this is a time to get video editors on board. Oh boy, like
No,
I
I've tried. I
yeah.
still edit everything
Oh, it's
myself.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, that's a tough thing to do. That is very impressive.
Mm.
And I think like the documentation piece as well. Just like remembering to do that as you're going along, and like turning to the camera and saying like, oh yeah, now we're going to do this, and
Yeah.
that didn't work. We'll do it again.
Yeah, and I've started to like it's always evolving because I'm trying to figure out ways to make it easier because also the easier it is for me, the more I'll enjoy it and the better it will come out. But something
Mm.
I've started doing more is doing voiceovers. So before I
Oh,
would have to like plan out every transition and I kind of had to edit in my head and make sure that I got the pieces to camera that I needed to explain what I was going to do and then doing it. And what I'm doing more is like I'm just shooting B-roll while I'm building and I'm reacting to the things that are happening, but I'm not spending a lot of time being like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do with this part. And that I
ah,
do in voiceover later.
got it.
And that's made it a lot easier. But it also means that a lot more of the storytelling happens in the edit.
Right,
And
right.
that works because I'm also the person editing it. But it would be harder for somebody else to be like, oh, how can we transition for this? And yeah, do a lot of scratch VO.
Yeah. Have you? I remember when James Bruton was on the show gobs of years ago as well. He said he edits like in real time. Like he'll shoot
Yeah.
something and put it in his timeline and shoot something. Do you do that too? Like that's crazy to me.
Not really. So I'll have my assistant like puts everything in the timeline and sometimes she does a first cut down so she cuts out all the bad takes and stuff. And I tried to like if I'm going to shoot a piece of camera, I'll rewatch what the latest footage was. But it's like if I'm building, I'm building and I'm not going to I think it's so hard to switch gears and be like, "No, I'm going to sit and edit
Yeah.
for 2 hours because I'm like, no, I'm building. I'm like covered in paint and I'm going to
Yeah.
keep on doing that."
Right. Yeah. Well, need another keyboard.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, like it really is that. It's that that everybody hates the documentation phase, but that's like such a critical part of
Yeah.
that part of your process. It's just like, yeah, you have to do that. It's crazy. For people that haven't been watching, shame on them, but what have you been building in the past 5.5 years?
So a lot of it has been, I mean, Truckla was a big one.
Yes.
So I converted a Tesla into a pickup truck.
Yes.
And that was a huge project for me. I mean, both in like what an undertaking the build was, but also in the implications that it had for my career. Good ones.
Got it.
And then, I mean, recently it's really been like what I've been most interested in is like random everyday problems. So
Mm.
it's a lot of like little inconveniences or corners of my house where I'm like, I want to make this work better. And then I'll spend a month making some very specific and over engineered solution to it, but I'll also just like have a blast making it.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's been a lot of like, I designed a fruit bowl. This is not on YouTube. I did it for a online class, but I designed a fruit bowl that you can change the diameter of the bowl depending on how much fruit you have. So it's like actually a mechanical fruit bowl that almost has this like iris mechanism in the
Oh,
bottom.
nice. Yeah.
So it's stuff like that because I'm like, dang, I always have like one apple or 15 apples,
Right.
and I don't want to have to switch out different bowls. So a lot of it is just like kind of mundane problems in some way, but I just love it.
Yeah, that's what Buckminster Fuller was doing too, right? I mean, he was making
Yeah.
making space houses and then putting stuff in that space house, I think.
Yeah.
That's really cool. No, that's, and actually, I think you have moved since you were in the Bay
Mhm.
Area, and now you are in the
Yeah, I moved
LA-ish
to
area.
LA. Yeah,
Yeah.
during
Okay.
the pandemic.
How was the? I guess pandemic means the maker
Uh,
scene is not going to matter too much in that amount of time, but
Yeah, it was September 2020. I think mostly it was just, I lived in San Francisco for 6 years, I think, which I feel like around 5 or 6 years is usually where people are like, should I really still live here?" But it was mostly just like renting a house and a workshop and
mm,
having to justify that cost of living for myself and
I
being
see.
like, I'm not in tech. I can kind of live anywhere. So I might as well just move somewhere where there's more work for me and more community, really.
Yeah.
So it was great. It's been a very like chaperoned experience because it's been mostly during the pandemic. So I feel like I'm dating LA and I'm like allowed to hold its hand, but I can't do any of the fun stuff. But it's been really great. And I mean, a big difference as well was that I was able to buy a house for the first time in my life, and that's
Awesome.
really been like such a huge like inspiration as a maker
Yeah.
because I don't have to explain myself to a landlord.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Yeah, not
can
even like
just
the small
do
things like
stuff.
paint. You're like, oh no, I'm ripping this wall down. This is
No,
my wall.
I'm just playing around, and it's been so fun to just be like, how can I make this space work better? What can I do with this? And honestly, like I think the product company and the Yacht store are in some ways like a direct result of that and of like the pandemic having a lot of time on my hands and
Hmm.
just having actual time to build stuff and not just because otherwise I was always just having to rush builds because I was on the
Mm,
road so much and talking at conferences and stuff, and all of that slowed down. So like for the first time in my life I was able to really spend time on builds and trying to perfect them and make them better, and I think it just really changed the nature of the projects. And yeah, it's interesting how the pandemic kind of helped propel that in some ways,
yeah. Yeah, that's
as
great.
much as the supply chains like also screwed us over
Well, yeah, of
in
course.
many creative ways. Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. Do you have practical limits on what you will or won't do? So this came up actually on the show. Dave and I were talking about chargers. Like we're like both like, well, we don't touch power in our houses just because it's like the
Hmm.
potential to burn stuff down. And actually, there was a build video I just posted to our subreddit today as well about like someone who I was actually thinking about your build with Truckla as well. Like they they actually converted their car to electric, and like they just they were very comfortable changing the nature of like these solid white goods. I don't know what you'd call like a car and a house and stuff like that. Like things that
Yeah.
have a lot of stored value in them.
Hmm.
I wimp out really fast. I don't know what's your take on that? Like, are you willing to knock a house, or knock a wall down, or rip out electrical, or deal with things that might be potentially dangerous in the house?
I don't mess with electrical or plumbing. I haven't.
Yeah,
Like water, I won't mess with because I'm like a water leak is going to be so bad and I
yeah,
don't trust
yeah.
myself to do that. I've been like, should I get my contractor's license or something like that just to have it and to be able to do those things because I'm like, yeah,
Mm,
of course we could learn it. But yeah, I don't really do that, and then it's also like, I'm okay with being destructive, but I want it to be in the honor of like being constructive eventually. So it's
yeah,
like the
yeah.
reason I felt okay with cutting Truckla apart or cutting apart a brand new car was because I was like, oh, this is destructive, but it is because I actually want to turn it into something better or something that I want more. So yeah, I wouldn't just want to like, I feel like there's definitely a branch of YouTube as well that's just like, let's put stuff on fire
Yeah, yeah,
and like break things because we're wealthy enough to be able to do that. And I'm
yeah,
just like, yeah, but then you have to make something out of it, and that's different.
yeah, yeah, and maintain it. I think is the other thing that I think about. Like, the two in the so like say I decide to go do some plumbing in my house.
Hmm.
I've done that in the past, but then like when it breaks, it's my fault and I have to go fix. I don't have to fix it, but like I feel like it's that kind of
Yeah.
like added mental burden too.
Yeah. I'm very good at the let's make it different. But then I'm very bad at the maintaining part.
Yeah.
Then I'll happily have somebody come help.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing some like design types. I mean, like you have a very design sensibility type of thing as well. Like the scissor lamp, I think that's one that you have, right? And the window,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's one we're working on as a product.
Oh,
That
really?
one is
Okay.
actually,
Yeah.
yeah. So we have so like some of the products that we're working on are new builds completely and things that I never documented for YouTube, but that I've been working on the side. And then some of it is like YouTube favorites, the scissor lamp, the companion chair.
As seen on new TV.
As seen on YouTube. Yeah. Also eventually probably gonna do I made a side table that looks like a big thread spool. So there are some things like from that calendar or from that roster of like YouTube projects that we're gonna turn into products. But then yeah, also some new stuff. And it's honestly, it's just really fun to have another like arena to do things. And as much as product design and manufacturing is incredibly painful, and inevitably any product that you start manufacturing, you're eventually going to start hating a little bit just because of like all the problems with it.
Yeah. If I see another thread spool table ever again in my life, I'm going
Oh my
to chuck
God.
something.
I'm like, I don't want this in my house anymore because it just makes me anxious.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been such a like fun and hard learning curve.
Yeah.
But then also just like having another business that I can, while I still do YouTube, like I can have these two kind of flow side by side in a really nice way.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's dig into the product stuff because, like you said, this is a big shift. I mean, you're probably talking to a lot of manufacturers, I assume. I mean, what is the taking a scissor lamp to production? What does that look like for you?
It's looking really painful. I mean, it's fun, but essentially, so I mean, as anyone who's done manufacturing or talked to anyone who does manufacturing, like it's a very big difference to make 1 and 10,000 of something. Like the process that you need to use is so different. So I've made a lot of ones for my YouTube channel, but then there is a huge like undertaking in design for manufacturing. So a lot of it is just being like, what compromises are we willing to make on the shape and form and functionality of this product to be able to manufacture it? And once you have that design down, it's getting samples from different factories that are bidding to do it, and a lot of calipers. So just like, I mean,
incoming
the
inspection in your garage kind of thing, or what?
Yeah, no. So we'll get samples, and my engineer in the UK will also get samples, and then we'll just like take very detailed photos of everything and try to evaluate it. And also like there's a lot of detective work of like, this is how we told them to make it, but we think that they use these and these processes because we can see the glue joints here are different, and these corners, like they're milled and not mitered. So there's a lot of just trying to figure out what happened. And this is also like manufacturing during the pandemic when we can't just go there and walk on the factory floor. So we do have liaisons in China who are helping us get these factories and stuff, but like I still haven't been able to go there in person.
So you mentioned 10,000. I mean, is it like 10,000 single shot? Is it 10,000 over the life of the product? What's your EAU, Simone?
Yeah. Well, thank you.
What do the manufacturers love asking that?
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, especially when you're working with new manufacturers and products that you haven't manufactured before, we've kind of been tiptoeing the orders. So we'll order like a small pre-production run where you're like, okay, I just want 50 units that are manufactured using the exact same methods that are going to do at a bigger scale and evaluate that. And then we've just kind of been like, okay, let's put in an order for 500 or for 1,000, because what you really don't want is to have to open 10,000 boxes and you're like, they're all the wrong color or they're all scratched up. And like there are so many. So in 2018, I did a Kickstarter campaign for the Everyday Calendar. There were some really painful moments of like getting 100 calendars, and these are expensive products. Like we're selling them for $365 now. So even just 100 calendars, it's a lot of money up front from us, and they were all scratched up because of the storage rack that they had used. So they had just been like storing the PCBs on top of each other and the prongs from the PCB over it had been scratching them up, and like opening box and
Oh
box after those,
no.
it's just like such a nightmare.
Oh
So I've
my
really
God.
learned to like be conservative with orders until you build a lot of trust with the manufacturer and being like, okay, they can actually deliver on this.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of just like ordering different prototypes and trying to evaluate them, and then like as you gain confidence in the product and in their proficiencies, you increase the orders. So I mean, we'll go up, like the second order for us is almost always bigger.
Yeah.
So the first
Yeah.
order will be pretty small, and then the second one we're like, okay, this is good, and then we can put in a bigger order.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can imagine will be a boon to your business will be that you could do short run and like kind of like teaser type stuff on the channel and be like, this is a short run first edition type of scissor
Mhm.
lamp thing, and then that might actually get additional interest in it as well because you have this promotional engine.
Yeah. No, I mean it's been good to. I'm very uncomfortable with a lot of stuff like that. Like my
Really?
manager would love it if I did more things like that. I don't know. I'm just always, and that's
Huh.
also one of the parts of like wanting the brand, the Yacht store, to be separate from me, because then we
Ah.
can use marketing tactics, or that I would be really uncomfortable with using my own face for. Like, not we're not going to be very aggressive, but like if I'm posting on my Instagram, I'm always like, oh, I don't want to clutter people's feeds, or like I don't want to ever ask them to watch something or do something that I don't think is worth watching or doing.
Ah.
So having the brand separate for me, it's like, okay, I feel comfortable with like us running ads, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So you're gonna see Simone in like a banner ad being like waving and being like, buy this lamp.
I just can't. I just can't. And that's the thing, like
Yeah.
that's the push and pull of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
really, like we've worked so fucking hard on these products, but
Yeah.
at the same time I'll be like, yeah, maybe check it out if you want to. I don't know. You don't have
no,
to, but like
no
if
big
you
deal. It's
want
just my
to.
future. I guess there's a lot of money tied up in this. I don't care.
Yeah, no, maybe I've like worked for the last 5 years on this, but like whatever. I just no pressure. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. No, I think that engineering to sales shift. I've been in some conversations recently. You know, like the ask for the sale. Have you like
Hmm.
been in those meetings yet?
What do you
Those
mean?
So like where you get to the end of the call and then you're like, all right, it's coming. We have to do this. And be like, do you want to buy this right now? That is like the line that needs to come out of my mouth. And I'm just like, oh
Nah.
God.
No, fortunately, I haven't had to do that
Oh,
just yet, but maybe one day, and I'll give you a
I'm sure.
call.
Yeah. I'm sure like you're the boss, right? I mean, like I can imagine that being a thing, especially if, the Yetch store grows big enough that it would be acquired at some point as well, right? I mean, which is another benefit to being separate from
Hmm.
Simone, which is like you could sell the Yetch brand without it selling your personhood.
Yeah, which I, for the record, have no plan doing. But
Sure,
that was
sure.
one of the parts I was thinking, because like going through my health problems, and yeah, I had a brain tumor. I went through brain surgery.
Mm,
It really like shone a light for me on how brittle the business model of like influencing is, because if
mm,
I'm not well enough to be in front of a camera or on a stage, like everything stops.
yeah.
And it's just not sustainable, and it's just not scalable. Like I also, just for my mental health, of being like, I need to make sure that I feel like it's always voluntary for me to go in,
Hmm. Yep.
and not something that I'm like, oh, I have to do this because otherwise like people are going to lose their jobs. So having a kind of a company that can keep on going independent of me was really important, and something where I'm like, this can take some pressure off of my face so I can just decommission it.
Hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really smart move. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been interesting because, like, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
here to be interrupted.
Yeah.
I'm here
Okay.
to talk to you.
Okay, fuck you. So no, just kidding. But something that's really interesting about like the creator economy is that it's so young, and the creator economy, I mean like people who
Yeah.
are on
Yeah.
YouTube and on TikTok and stuff like that, it's so young that you haven't really seen, I mean, you haven't seen a full lifespan career on
Mm,
any of these platforms. And there's a point where you're like, I've been on YouTube for the last 7 years, and it's, I still really enjoy it, but you're also like, what am I going to do when I'm 55?
right.
And like, what's the long game for this? And you haven't really seen like what people turn it into or how people do it. And for me, it was really like, I have an opportunity to have my YouTube channel support kind of whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
And this was it. And it's kind of been like such a good way of like, it takes a lot of risk out of it for me,
Mm. Yeah.
because I know that I have free marketing and I also have like a free R&D department, because I'm constantly having to build things for YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's really been interesting to be like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm like on YouTube, but like, what do I want to do beyond that, and what do I want to do for my career?
Right. And I think like, aside from like the knowing any monetary details, like in terms of actual growth, like there's, thinking about growth of like influencers, like you could basically sell more of your audience's attention, which I think is a
Mhm.
diminishing return type of thing, right? You could be like,
Yeah.
how many times can you promote something, assuming you felt comfortable doing that? But eventually that does, people will be like less and less inclined to go after that advertiser's thing each time. Whereas in theory, each new person that comes to a store or a product design entity, they could want all of the things, which would be, and then each additional thing you add, you could also have them as a return customer, which is also beneficial.
Yeah. No, that. And also it's like the only way to make more money or to scale up as like an influencer is to get more famous. And I'm really like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
really don't want that.
Right.
I'm so happy where things are at.
Yep.
It's like, and anything beyond this, I feel like it would start getting prohibitive or limiting in ways that I just don't want. So then it's like, okay, if I don't want to like grow and have a huge YouTube channel or like get on a super big show or anything, then like what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, this had always been scrambling around. So here we are.
No, that's a really thoughtful approach to it, honestly. Like I think that if I take a very quick second to think about like kind of an analogy, I think about like some of the bands that were very influential in my life when I was in
Mhm.
middle school, and like they were very popular at the time. But I think about like, what are those folks doing now? Right? They had all that attention then,
Mhm.
but they're very likely still playing those same songs to smaller and smaller crowds, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I assume maybe YouTube will take the same kind of
No,
approach
and
or
there's a lot
path.
of channels like that where it's people just doing the same thing and maybe they still love it, but it's
Hmm.
like for a smaller and smaller audience. But it's like if that's what they want to do, that's great. But I'm also like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I never want to like feel like I'm beating a dead horse,
Hmm.
because that horse deserves its rest. It had a hard life.
Yeah. Take it easy. What was the name?
Take it easy, horse.
The horse that was in the championship or the recent Preakness or whatever. It was called
What
Early
are you
Voting.
talking about?
Early Voting. It was the name. I love the name. The one of like there's like Kentucky Derby and the Preakness and all
Yeah.
these different things. The one that just won this big race, its name was Early Voting, which was
Oh,
like this
wow.
great. What a great name for a horse.
Yeah, that is a
Anyway.
good horse name. Yeah, I should have named my Zelda Breath of the Wild horse that. Very specific reference.
Yeah. Let's talk about the everyday calendar. So that had definitely came up, I think, after last time you were on the show. What
Mhm.
was the genesis of that, and kind of some more of the story? I mean, we heard about the scratch PCBs, but like that was I think of the things that I've heard you talk about in terms of your current store and the stuff that you've built already. That is the most electronicsy thing that you've built. It seems.
Yeah, and I've sworn it off
Yeah.
ever since. I'm like, never again. Oh,
Right.
except we are doing more electronics, but
Yeah.
nothing at the complexity of the calendar. So yeah, the everyday calendar, it's an electronic calendar that you hang on your wall. It has a whole year on it. So it has 365 days. And if you tap a day, you can light it up. So it's kind of like a personal gold star system. I made it because I wanted to meditate every day. And I would make these like grids and notebooks and check little boxes. But I was like, I want a prettier version of this that hangs on my wall. So it was a really interesting, it was definitely an incredibly ambitious first product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially like considering how small of a team we were and that we were doing everything independently. And it was like the DFM, or design for manufacturing process, was really interesting because the first prototype that I had just made for myself, it actually had toggle switches. So each day was represented by a toggle switch.
Yeah.
And then I was looking into, or we were looking into like physical push buttons, but we very early on realized that like when you have 365 of everything or of anything on a BOM, like the cost of that unit is going to heavily implicate the cost of the product as a whole.
Mhm.
So early on realized we could not have any mechanical input really, because it would end up being like a $1,500 product, which I didn't want to sell for. So we ended up using capacitive touch. So the front board is actually all circuit board. So it's a really giant circuit board. I mean, it's bigger than an A4 paper.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's all, so no mechanical input, just capacitive touch, which is very interesting to ship around the world, because it's like if somebody's outlet isn't grounded properly, the calendar can start acting really funny. Like there's definitely a lot of weird stuff that happens with it, and that's like beyond our scope. Like there's no fix in the product. It's like people's outlets, but they don't really notice it with other stuff.
You can use your calendar, but just make sure you're touching a metal windowsill when you do it, please.
Yeah, totally. And also I should disclaim that this is like exceedingly rare. We've had a few people where we've sent multiple replacement calendars and they just keep on showing the same weird behavior. And when we try them here, they work fine. And then it's like, oh, there's just something wrong with their outlet. But yeah, it's been a great product overall, or I mean, like in terms of how it's been received. They started selling it at the MoMA, so like in the MoMA gift store, which was a huge honor. That's like our first and only wholesale retailer.
That's the Museum of Modern Art, is that correct?
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Thank you. But it's really been so I'm still like waiting for that product to kind of be self-moving in some way, because we did the Kickstarter and we shipped that, and then we were looking into we made a second batch and we shipped that. But then when the pandemic happened, our BOM costs went up with like 50%, and it just made it unfeasible. So we kind of had to hold off to manufacture any more units for a while. And I'm still just waiting to and we've been changing factories as well because of some other stuff. So I'm just waiting for that to start like really rolling along, and where we're like continuously putting in new orders. But I think it's still a couple of months out. But
like, so you're still working down stock and stuff like that on your store side, just mean?
No, it was, so we were switching factories. So we still have some stock, but then it's like, it's going to be a while before we can put in another, we're testing 50 units from this new factory, but it's going to be another while before we can order a big batch from them. So there's just like a lot of hiccups along the road, but I'm really hoping that we can like find a factory and then just continuously work with them and keep on churning out these calendars and ship them around the world.
I mean, you have really disparate like product types. So how are you managing all this stuff? I mean, do you have like a documentation system for all this? Like what's it called? A PLM? Do you have a PLM for this stuff?
You know, one of the interesting things about starting this business is like really having to decide my own role and my own involvement in it. And the most important thing for me, like I was just like, I want to be the creative output. I'll be the one who's like, this is an idea. Let's see if this can be a product. I want to be head of the brand and everything that you experience as a customer. But I cannot, because of lack of time. And like, frankly, I just need to make money for the business on other ends. I cannot be the one who's like actually doing the engineering or sitting and talking to manufacturers. So I'll be on top of like the broad strokes of that. And I will jump on calls with manufacturers for critical things where I will need to be able to make decisions on the spot. But I'm not sitting and like making all the file names, naming the files. I'm the one who throws in like 30 new files, and I'm like, hey, can you please sort these for me?
Right.
So
cool.
yeah, it's been interesting to try to like hire and recruit for the business as well, and seeing like what are the most critical roles that we need. So what we have now, there's 1.5 full-time people. There's one who's coming on full-time in July, which I'm really excited about. So I have one full-time product manager. So she's the one who's just talking to manufacturers and chasing down quotes and like really being on top of where everything is at on the pipeline. And yeah, she's just a beast in the best of ways and keeping track of all of that. And then The second person who's coming on full time is an engineer. So
Awesome.
he's going to lead a lot of the design for manufacturing efforts for these other products that we want to add to the pipeline, which is going to be really exciting. So I'm hoping that can like pick up speed a little bit, because my concern as well was like launching the brand in the store, and then it's going to be another year until we have another product to launch.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like it's taking 1 to 2 years to make any product
Yeah.
for us, because we are so small and like don't have any established supply chain yet. But I think that will let us pick up some speed.
So one thing that I would imagine in similar like store launches type of thing, like you're doing with the Giertz store, is you could bring in outside, people that are also building products, and you could, start to sell that. Is there any plan around that side of things, or is that not really of interest to maintain the brand?
Yeah, so for me, it's always a push and pull of like ownership versus convenience and speed.
Mm-hmm.
And really early on, I was like, oh, we should like pair up with a bigger brand or a bigger company that we can tap into their supply chain and into their product ecosystem. And also to take some of the risk out of it, because it's like, it is really expensive to develop
Oh,
products,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm investing money from the media company into the product business. But you're also like, it would be pretty nice if you had like a bigger infrastructure that could assume some of that risk. But then like every step of the way, I've been like, I want to do it independently because we can.
Yeah.
Like I know that we can do it and we can pull it off, and I want to try that. And then if it doesn't work out, then we can see if there's outside expertise that we can bring in. But it's really like my goal is not to sell the most products in the world. Like my goal isn't to get into the Targets and the Walmarts,
Yeah.
It's like to make something that feels really unique and that I'm super proud of. And to do that, it's like I need to retain ownership. And that's kind of been my like mantra for the media business as well. Like there are so many ways that I could have scaled up, and that I could have had a show, or I could have had a much bigger output of content. I could have hired more people. I could have worked with bigger organizations. But I was always like, no, I want to do it at the speed where I feel like I can make things that I'm proud of. And that's kind of what I've kept on doing for the product business as well. And it's something I'm historically very happy that I've done. So hopefully that will be a good decision for this as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually great. It seems like you're not, like, so you have a store now. It's not like you're trying to become a retailer. You're selling your own stuff, really. So that makes sense from that perspective. So yeah, that's actually really, that's a great view on things, I think.
I mean, sometimes it would be nice to be somebody who's like, oh, I know exactly how we're going to do this. And this is like, just
Yes,
plug in
answers.
here and we'll fix everything. But I also know that that's just not how it works. And also, I know that I'm so stuck up and anal about things. I mean, it's why I edit my own video still, because I'm like, no, it's the only way it becomes exactly the way I want it to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's good to know that about know thyself, right? One thing that's interesting about the type of products that you're selling. So like, I'm going to make a little bit of a mental leap here, not just the things that are currently in the store, but also like the stuff that you've been showing and building and things like that, is that like they kind of have, I'm going to say fashion, but it's not fashion like they are fashion products. I want to say that they have like an additional margin on top of them because they have like a design element to them. And there's like a potential margin adder as a result of that. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not intentional, but like, are you able to charge a higher premium than you might in another sector? Does that make sense?
I mean, price is really tricky for me, because
Yeah.
I'm always wanting to sell things as cheaply as possible. But then you're like, as a small, because I don't ever want to ask somebody for more time or money or anything, But as a small brand, it's like your margins are really important. So it's kind of been a compromise from there, but also being the bracket that I want the Yacht store to be in. It's more boutique. It's products that you can't really get anywhere else. So it's not just like another chair. It's like, oh, this is a special type of chair that you can't really get anywhere else. And it was really interesting to develop the brand. I mean, we went through so many iterations of photo shoots and of designs of the website, and I kind of felt like I wanted these like very polar opposite attributes to be in. Like I wanted it to be self-deprecating but fancy, or I wanted it to be like gritty but also exclusive. Like I didn't
Mhm.
want I wanted to be expensive looking but not snobby at all. And
Yeah,
I wanted it to be funny but not silly. Like it's
right.
not for kids. So there were all these like I feel like the brief that I gave myself in the development was it was kind of impossible, but I'm very happy with where it's at now, and I feel like I've hit that note. But then also it's going to be ever evolving. So
Yeah. I mean, my reference point for this is I have a friend who runs a very, very high-end furniture store
mhm.
in Chicago. And
Yeah,
I've walked in there. I've s- I, he runs a very, very good operation, but like he's a retailer and like he's selling these brands and I look at these things and I'm like, "Oh my god, like they are charging so much like so much
hmm
money for these things." For something where I'm like, I know I couldn't have designed anything in that, like literally nothing in that store. I could not have designed it. But I also look at it and I'm like, I look at like a $7,000 chair and I'm like, there is no
yeah,
more than $200 of materials in there. And
yeah,
I think the thing that always comes back to me is like, it doesn't matter, right? Like the price is the price and that's what they set. And that's what the people are willing to pay it. And so
yeah,
like, but I think people listening to this, and especially like I think about like the Tindy style market, the small circuit boards, it's tough to get past some multiplier because there's just there's not a higher perceived value than the function that's there. And
yeah,
I feel like the stuff that you're designing, there is a higher perceived value because of the design and the story that you're building around
yeah. No, it's definitely, gosh, I hope I never sell anything for $7,000 unless it's like an auctioned item.
it.
But
I don't know, like
no,
that puzzle table though, like that something like that could be, like
yeah,
that's got hundreds of
I
dollars of
could
material in it, but
never.
like
Yeah,
someone might buy that as like a very
yeah.
specific thing.
But I feel like it's definitely butting up against like my comfort level with it. And I feel like now the pricing on the website is kind of my upper limit. So I mean, we're selling the rings for $85 a piece. And also part of that has just to do with the manufacturing process of it. Like they're all milled, they're not cast because
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yep.
a screwdriver ring. So it's
Yep.
actually a
Yep.
functional tool. So you need the metal to be hard enough
That's right.
to be able to use
Right.
it. So you can't cast it.
Yep. I was gonna ask about that actually, because like you show the promo of it like
Yeah.
being used, and I just imagine like the marring on it. Like it's not like it's not silver coating, it's actually like a
No, it's
stainless or
stainless it's
yeah.
stainless steel. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it says on the box that I designed for it, it says intended for light screwdriver use only unless you're into scratches. So it does scratch up a little
Yeah.
bit, but like you
Yeah.
can
Okay.
totally use it as a for light duty
Mm-hmm.
screwdriver
Yeah.
purposes. But yeah, it's really like finding your price bracket is also an interesting thing and stuff you don't think about. But I'm feeling like more premium, but not like it's hope it will never be like Louis Vuitton expensive. That's
Right.
not the bracket I wanna
Okay.
be in. Like, I want it to be affordable enough that if you really wanted it and you were really excited about it, you could afford it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is then the other side of this, right? So I think about like I said, design, fashion, like stuff that like commands a much higher margin. The other
Mhm,
side of that then is if it gets to a significantly high level, then you start to have like knockoffs and you start to have true like
mhm.
outright fakes and stuff like that. And that's another like potential downside to that piece of it.
Yeah, because I mean, the bigger the difference between the cost of your product and the price you're selling it for, yeah, the more you're inviting counterfeit products, which I haven't seen any of ours so far. And I think we're still a while out before we would see that, but maybe one day.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I was just thinking about another of your projects that people should go check out the video of. I would say the chair for your adorable
Mhm.
dog as well would also be a seven. I would that could be a $7,000. let's
Oh
let's
gosh,
try and
I
sell
hope
what's not
not.
bolted down, Simone. What can we sell in your house that
Yeah,
you built?
totally.
$7,000. Go. It's like reverse
$7,000.
price is right.
Oh my god. No, but that's one of the products we're working on. So I'm currently sitting on version 4.0
Oh, interesting.
of that one. Yeah. But it's like when you go into furniture, I mean, one of the reasons while I haven't pursued the puzzle table yet as a product is because I'm like, it would need to be a $2,000-$3,000 table, and that's more
Hmm.
expensive than I want it to be. And the chair feels like we could probably get it into, I'm hoping to get it into like a $700 price point, which is still fucking expensive for a chair.
Yeah. I think I've probably sat on $700 chairs, like pretty, like most offices, they like a Aeron chair is at or above
Yeah,
that, right? And
I know, but I think this is like my Swedish forced humility of like, no, you can't. You can't charge too much. You can't ask for too much, which is
yeah,
very much in a contradictory relationship with my job.
interesting. Yeah, that's tough, right? I mean, like that's going to be a push pull, I think, probably for the rest of your product design career, huh?
It's definitely an interesting thing when you're like terrified of disappointing or upsetting people. That it's
Gosh.
like running a product business is like
Yeah, also
the
YouTube
pinnacle
might
of
be tough for that
setting.
one too, Simone.
Yeah, no, I know, but
Oh,
I'm growing a thicker skin.
okay.
And so far people have been very, very sweet and happy. So, it's really you can only try your absolute best and try to do good by people, and that's really all you can do.
Yeah. How about the logistics piece of that then? So like I imagine shipping a ring from China,
Hmm.
probably not super onerous, but like shipping a chair, unless it's flat
Yeah.
pack. Are you doing flat pack?
We
Scandinavian
are
roots coming out?
currently, no, I mean, we are looking into flat pack. Flat pack engineering is a whole other world.
Oh
And we're
yeah.
like, okay, we need
Yeah.
somebody who actually knows this and can look at it and figure out how to flat pack it. I think what we're settling on and what we're currently working on is like a half flat pack. So there
Okay.
are parts of it that are flat packed and some assembly that's going to be required, but it's not fully like, especially with a companion chair because it has a staircase that goes around. There are just some
Oh
elements
yeah.
that would be incredibly. There are bent rails with rods in them. So there's some components that would be very hard to assemble
Mm-hmm.
because you need glue and stuff. So kind of a half flat pack. But no, I mean it's definitely, shipping has just been crazy during the pandemic as
Mm-hmm.
well. And
Oh
like
yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like the rings, we were able to just freight on the plane because even a couple of thousand rings, it's just not as, it doesn't add a lot of weight or bulk.
Mm-hmm.
But stuff like the everyday calendar, which is an incredibly heavy product, it really scales up. So all of those have to go by boat. But
Mm.
yeah, and it's stuff like that where you're like, okay, but then you need a fulfillment center in all the different areas where you're selling. So we probably need a European fulfillment center, and it's all,
Oh yeah.
it's there's so many different things that need to grow, and you just got to find which one to grow first.
Yeah. And sales tax. Oh my gosh. I didn't even think
Yeah.
about sales tax.
Ugh,
That's like
and different regulatory bodies in different countries. I mean,
oh.
the thing of like, because we're going to start selling everyday calendars in Japan,
Uh-huh.
and the amount of messages about power supplies and what the power supply requirements are for the Japanese market. And it's just like, we have to reprint like, I think 1,000 stickers because the power supply was certified. It had all the certs, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't printed on the sticker. So we had to
Oh my gosh.
reprint and like put those stickers on all the power supplies for them to go to Japan. So just stuff like that where you're like, I don't want to know about this, but I'm in a position where we're having to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing where you get pulled in, even if you're not like making the new sticker, you're still getting pulled in because it's like this is a very potentially big issue, I'm sure.
Yeah. Or like, our fulfillment center, we have these little thank you cards that we're putting in all the boxes. And the fulfillment center is like, oh, we need a barcode on the thank you box. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, can't you just use it as a part of the packaging? And they're like, no, they need barcodes. And we're like, they're all already been printed. And then what we ended up is one of our team members' partner having to sit for a whole weekend
Oh my
and
gosh.
stick stickers, barcode stickers on the back of 10,000 thank you like
Oh my
cards.
gosh.
Which is
Wow.
just like, it's so it's so infuriating. And you're like, is this truly the best solution? And then you're like, yeah, I guess it is.
Gosh. Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting, so like some of the stuff I've been doing, you see these software companies kind of coming into the hardware space, and or like I was doing consulting, and like same kind of thing. It was like software companies like, yeah, we want to build a hardware product, and like the first question almost always should be, are you sure Are you just
totally.
100? Do you know? You're not gonna know everything here, but do you even know the first stuff that's just gonna suck? Like,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely sometimes I'm like, why did my dream have to be one of the most complicated businesses that you could ever get into? Because I'm like, YouTube is making me anxious. Let's try manufacturing. I bet that's like gonna keep me up at
Oh my
night.
gosh.
You're like, yeah.
Oh boy. Does that mean you're gonna start going to trade shows for like manufacturing stuff? Because
No current plan.
they are
But
so awesome. So if I can put a pitch in
yeah.
for IMTS, this is one. So I was in Chicago. I used to live in Chicago, and this would come into
Mhm.
Chicago every year. I think this is the first year they're doing it again. You should just go just for walking the show floor. It's just like 9-axis machine, milling machines, and
Oh
they have like 3-phase
wow.
power coming down from the ceiling for all these things, and it's
It's
just
like an episode of How It's Made, but you're in it.
that's right, exactly, and it's
Oh
like it's just
wow.
like just going to look at bandsaws. There's just like a row of like bandsaw companies. It's so awesome.
If you're going, I'll go.
Am I going? I don't know. It's in September. Maybe. I think so. Here's the other thing I think about. This could be because you're kind of, you're popular content creator. I think there might be some. I dropped some ideas in the chat that we should talk about later, but like there might be some like manufacturing companies that want to have a voice such as yours as well. Like bridging that gap could have other potential benefits, I think, because in manufacturing companies, there's nothing sexy about manufacturing, right? It's just like everything is old school and they don't know how to advertise. They don't know anything about YouTube. And it's just like,
Mhm.
so how do they get the attention of people when they actually want, say they have budget to do that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Having someone who is in the media space, understands how to talk to an audience could be beneficial for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting area and something I'm trying to learn a lot more about. But yeah, it's still like currently the only dovetail between the store and the manufacturing side and the YouTube channel is like using my YouTube channel as
Yeah.
an R&D department.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of if there are other stories that I can tell about the product business because there's so much that's happening and there's a lot of things that I find very interesting about building this business, but I'm still trying to figure out like how to make content about that.
Right. Especially, I would imagine at the same scale, that would be tough as well, where it's like the manufacturer is like, yeah, we're interested in like being a sponsor. And you're like, here's my sponsor rates. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
we thought something different. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like, manufacturing is like not great margins, right? That's why I feel like that's a
Yeah.
tough business to.
No, it's definitely tricky. And you're like, when we're cutting these margins, what are we actually cutting them from? Because like I really
Right.
hope it's not the PPE of the people
Yeah.
working on the floor,
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's a tough thing to kind of do there. When you are going to manufacturing, like when you're preparing, so say you make a video about something,
Mhm.
what is like a best case scenario that like you hand over just the thing, or is it like, are you like making plans as well for like, here's my, I guess, CAD files and material list, or how
Mhm.
do you actually hand off a thing?
So some of the projects that I have been working on recently, I have been collaborating with the engineer who's coming on full time.
Yeah.
His name is Stu. So I'll have a sketch of like what I want. We will collaborate on making a model in Fusion. And then if we're going into manufacturing, he'll make engineering drawings based off of that and whatever like the DFM model will be. So yeah, but I mean, my future plan, like my vision for what I want this to be, is to just have like a giant workshop. There's a corner of it that's just mine, and I have a team of engineers, and I can just throw over a prototype to them and be like, "Let's
Yeah.
see if this is something," you know. And
Yeah.
then I want to be the person who has samples brought to me, and I'll be like, "I don't like
No.
that button."
No.
Yeah,
Yes.
no,
No.
that color of blue is too blue,
Too blue.
and
Yep.
yeah, too blue.
Too blue.
So yeah, that's kind of my future plan and what I'm hoping
That's awesome. Like
I'll be able to pull off.
that's a really cool vision, actually. I think that's.
I don't know.
Does that mean then? So like again, like I'm envisioning this with like the material types and like there's a lot of other stuff that I don't think about on like the overall product design side of things.
Mhm.
But does that mean then you have just like piles of the nose? Like, what happens to all those? Is it just like scrap then?
Of the nose, oh gosh, it's really like I need a better system for cataloging all of this stuff, because we have so many prototypes of each product.
Yeah.
And stuff like the rings, it's like it's easy because they're tiny, but we also have like generations of everyday calendars, or generations of puzzles and puzzle box iterations, which I didn't mention. I'm selling incomplete white puzzles.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's an outlier in the product roster. Is I just thought it would be really funny to sell solid white puzzles, but you only get 499 out of 500
Yeah,
pieces.
It's very masochistic.
Yeah, it's the most like wholesome villainous thing I could think about. So no, I definitely need to catalog those better. But I mean, even like old YouTube projects,
Oh yeah.
I always want to harvest them for parts. And
Mm.
my team is like, no, you cannot. Like, we need to keep all of this. So we need to file them away, because maybe one day in the future we'll want. But like, I mean, the earliest builds that I had, like the wake up machine, which was an alarm clock that slapped me in the face with a rubber hand. Yeah, that one I don't have anymore, because
Oh, it
I
just got
sold all the motors and the
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it got picked apart and Frankensteined into other projects.
Right. Yeah, that's weird, huh? How that happened. I mean, like it, but at the other end of that, then is like then the storage needs and the cataloging. You have to basically be like a archivist for your own
Yeah,
stuff, right? It's just like,
totally.
and someone's got to dust that, like.
Yeah, which is hard when you don't really see the value of it in
Right,
like
right.
in the present, where
Yeah.
it's like, now looking back, I'd be like, yeah, it would be pretty neat to have that first wake up machine. But back then you're just like, this is like duct taped together and it's terrible. And
If I
it
keep this,
was,
I have to look at
but
it.
it's also, yeah, it's like historically it's really important for me.
Right. Oh man. Well, I mean, I guess you have the videos. That is ultimately the important thing. But yeah,
Yeah,
hmm.
for sure.
That auction item, that could have been the $7,000 thing, Simone. Like,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah. Here's some poorly duct taped together motors for you.
That's great. Yeah, I mean that vision you picture the paint of the of that future product shop is awesome. I think I hope you get there.
Well, thank you. It feels really, you always need something to work towards. And this feels like such a worthy goal, and something that I feel like I could be comfortable with for the rest of my working life. There's nothing of like, oh, what would be beyond that? It's just like, no, that would be it.
Yeah.
So I'm just really grateful to have something to work towards, especially when I'm like, what do I do with all this that I got,
Yeah.
And this is like, oh, this is it, and this is the dream that I can chase.
That's great. Before you go,
Mhm.
I wanna put a pitch in for more electronic stuff. I tried this.
Mhm.
Actually, this is an email. We were talking about emails that I had sent you in the past. I think this was an email I had sent you. I had said, Simone, if you need any help building IoT things, and you said, hell no. I think was your response. Which is
Wow, rude.
no, it's fair. It's fair. And I think it was right. I think it was actually like as the calendar thing was going on. So I think that's actually
Yeah.
where it came from. But how can we so you said you have some electronic stuff in flight. What's
Yeah.
what's it going to take?
I don't, the thing is, I'm still really, the funny thing about the everyday calendar is that like the fact that it's 0% internet connected actually became a part of the pitch.
That's
Because
true.
you're like,
Yeah.
it's not smart in any way. It doesn't connect to an app on your phone. Like there's no Bluetooth, no connectivity.
Mhm.
And I'm still like, I appreciate some of my IoT stuff sometimes, but mostly I'm just like, why are you so slow? Why isn't there just a switch so that I can change the color of this bulb on? And like, why do I have to pick my phone up? So I think I'm still a hell no on IoT, but
All right.
time will tell.
All right. Well, I'm sure some people are laughing their asses off at me right now, but I will say on the light thing, I have colored LED bulbs behind me, and they're wireless, but it's just like one of those like really cheap, like little push button
Mhm.
remotes, and I'm like very
Yeah.
happy with that. So
No, that's good.
I'm on
That's good.
board. I'm on board with that.
I think having to pick up my phone and connect to an app type of thing, like that
Mm.
that workflow, I just don't like it.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want the phone in my life, but some
Yeah.
IoT things I think are good. Actually, one thing that is necessary and is not very common is not like IoT inputs, so like things that are like measuring the world or whatever. I think there needs to be more silly outputs. So like, okay, so the
Mm.
temperature in your house is going up too high. Right now, it's always like, maybe your phone lights up, or maybe you have a voice assistant that tells you a thing. But like, why doesn't it blow up a balloon animal or something like that? There's no like silly
Mhm.
outputs for IoT things. It's always just
Mhm.
like normal inputs. And I think that's maybe a space you could innovate in the IoT
Oh,
space.
that's fun. Yeah, no, I do like that. I like it like what's it called? The Vesta board. There's this beautiful flipboard panel that
Oh,
hangs on your wall
uh-huh.
and that I came across when I was doing research for the Everyday Calendar because that was like a flip dot interface was one of the initial ideas. But yeah, it's just beautiful. So it's almost
Yeah.
like an airport arrivals
Yeah,
hall
right.
type of thing, but you have it and it can tell you the weather or jokes or whatever you want it to do. So that's a beautiful IoT application and where it's actually outputting something, but it's thoughtful and it's not intrusive.
And it's $3,000. So there you go. There's
And it's
the
so
It's
expensive.
very expensive.
I
Oh
know.
my
I
gosh.
was like, I want it, but I'm like, I can't. I
Yeah.
can't. I cannot.
That is going into the vestibule of high-end software offices.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe in my innovation office in the future, we can afford to put one in the entrance
Yeah.
above the receptionist.
I mean, if you had one of these $3,000 boards too. See, this is the other problem is that like, so I feel like in the hardware space, I don't know about you, but I am a cheapskate, right? So like I talk a
Mhm.
big game about like you should up your prices, but I'm such a cheapskate that I'm like, I look at this $3,000 Vesta board thing, I'm like, there was no way in my like maybe if I was a billionaire someday, but even then I'd be like, come on, $3,000.
Yeah, but that's also because you could make that.
But I could, but I won't, right? I mean, like that's
You
the thing.
won't. Yeah,
Yeah,
but that you know the price of it. It's the same like I mean for me looking at some laser cut
right,
accoutrements and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to pay
right,
$55 for this. I
right.
could make this in like 20 minutes.
All it would
And
do is
then
take my Saturday afternoon.
yeah, no, totally. And then I call it the make your own gnome. And it's that little gnome that sits on your shoulder and it's like, shouldn't you just make your own?
Oh my
And then you,
god.
after spending like twice the amount in material
Oh
and
yeah.
like 2 weeks of every free hour,
Oh my
you're like,
gosh.
I should maybe just have bought it, you know?
Yep. That resonates very hard with me. That is amazing.
hmm
Make your own gnome. Oh yeah.
Short for Myog.
Yep.
It's the Myog speaking.
Okay, Simone, it is time
Mhm.
for you to ask for the sale. We're going to practice here. So, listening audience, Simone is going to pitch you on buying something at yetch.store.
No,
Go.
no. Okay, so like if you don't have anything better to do and you maybe were interested in some stuff that you can't get anywhere else, like a screwdriver ring or like an incomplete puzzle, like maybe go to Yetch's store and check it out. I don't know. Bye.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant.
Yeah, maybe not,
But-
but thank you.
No, that was good. That was really good. I mean, that's what like I guess that's asking for the sale, right? I mean,
Oh gosh.
we don't know if anyone listening actually needs or wants these things, but we're gonna assume.
I think it's either that or fuck you, pay me.
Have you ever seen that talk? The guy that does that for like design services.
No.
Yeah, there's a talk called "Fuck You, Pay Me." That's
Oh
a
wow.
it's about a person that like basically is doing design for other people, and they're like, well, you should be able to you should prototype this for me for free.
Free, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
This is
sure.
fuck you, pay me. No,
Yeah.
it's been a mantra
Yeah,
as well for me,
yeah.
but in a very nice way.
Simone, for real, where could people find you online and this stuff if they don't know already?
I'm at Simone Yetch, so at Simone Giertz almost everywhere, and you can find Yetch store at yetch.store. So yetch.store. I mean,
Yes.
the joke that we didn't say is that the name of my brand is the way that you pronounce my last name. So it's the phonetic.
I thought that was brilliant. I really did. I mean, like people are
Thank
probably
you.
going to mispronounce your spelled name, much less often now, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, it's an undercuff way of educating people
That's
on
right.
how to pronounce my very unintuitive name.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Simone, thank you for coming back. I can't wait to talk to you again and hear about your trials and tribulations and successes in the product
Yeah.
design space. So thanks for coming back.
I'll see you 2027 if we're
Okay,
doing
that
this on a
sounds good.
5-year cycle. Yeah.
Thanks.